The book is called The Secret Life of Bill Clinton, The Unreported Stories. The author is Ambrose Evans-Pritchard. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Nice to be with you.
Let's begin where you begin in the book. You talk about how Oklahoma City bombing, how that incident revived the Clinton presidency. And you're using the president's words when you say the term revival.
He gave an interview on Air Force One after the election. A few days afterwards, he was sort of relaxed, and he said he owed his great turnaround in his fortunes to the Oklahoma bombing. And he meant it in a good spirit. It wasn't a sort of negative comment. But he said that what it did is it crystallized a sense in the country that right-wing and Republican rhetoric had gone too far. It had fostered an anti-government sort of sentiment in the country, and it had sort of precipitated this terrorist movement.
Why is that incident such a focal point of this book? Well,
I think something that hasn't been reported to the American people is that many of the families have filed a number of lawsuits, in fact, against the federal government, alleging that it was a sting operation, or at the very least, that the government was negligent and had some responsibility for what happened, perhaps had a degree of prior knowledge, that it was a broader conspiracy and they haven't told the full truth. The families, many of them are very angry. And one family in particular, Glenn and Kathy Wilburn, who lost 2 grandchildren in the daycare center, conducted their own private investigation for 2 years. And they feel that the government covered up the true story, that it was a broader conspiracy, and that it was probably a sting operation that went disastrously wrong, and they've not come clean about it.
Our guest will be with us until the top of the hour. Our phone lines are open. You can also fax or email us. Mr. Evans-Pritchard is a reporter based in London, spent some time here in Washington.
I did 4.5 years as the Washington correspondent for the London Sunday Telegraph, and I've now returned and I'm writing for the about European affairs for the Daily Telegraph in London.
Last Monday, syndicated columnist Robert Novak wrote this piece, A Sting Operation Gone Awry. And he talks about Andreas Strassmeyer, a former West German Army lieutenant illegally in the U.S. Who is he and why is he important to the bombing?
Well, that's a very good question. Tim McVeigh telephoned him a few days before the bombing, shortly after he called a Ryder truck rental agency. And that's how he got drawn into the whole question of the bombing in the first place. Now, he's a former German Army officer, spent 8 years in the Bundeswehr. And he told me he'd had intelligence training, he'd done some intelligence work in the German army, and he came here with the intention of working undercover for the US Justice Department. And he admitted that to me. So it's quite significant that he should figure as a character in this, the extended McVeigh circle. He's also been named by an undercover informant of the ATF, Carol Howe, as somebody who's stirring up race war and a terrorist campaign against the US government. Now, with his background, I find it very hard to believe that he's a genuine neo-Nazi terrorist, which is how he presented himself. I suspect that he was here on some kind of undercover mission. Now, whether it was for the German government or for the United States government or both, I don't know. I think my own conjecture, and this I can't prove it, is that he was a joint asset penetrating the neo-Nazi far right, and there was great concern that they were escalating their terrorist activities.
You devote a fair amount of time to a lot of the conspiracy theories that we hear on this network and read about from time to time in different publications. Vincent Foster. Was it suicide? Was it murder?
Well, I don't answer that question. What I say is that Kenneth Starr's investigator, the prosecutor he appointed to reopen the case, came to a different conclusion. He told Ken Starr, after a 4-month investigation, that there was serious evidence of foul play. His name is Mikel Rodriguez. He went to Starr, he told Starr what he'd uncovered during his investigation using the grand jury, and Ken Starr looked the other way. He didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to deal with it. So Rodriguez resigned, went back to California, and that is the only time that it's ever been seriously investigated. After that, it was all damage control. So I don't feel that Ken Starr has the authority to deliver the report that he's delivered. I don't think he answers any of the questions. It's just a rehash of the Fisk report, which was incredibly weak. And he selectively uses witness testimony to support his case, and it's very, very thin. And people who are familiar with the archive of documents in this case know that he's just ignored a colossal amount of evidence, and he's ignored what the crime scene witnesses said.
So what is your conclusion on the Clinton presidency so far?
I mean, in terms of the scandals or in terms of its general performance?
Well, in terms of this book.
Well, I would... my conclusion is that he's a very, very corrupt man, and you know, it's partly a generational thing. I think that the current generation in power, not just in America but in most of the industrial countries, is very has lost its honor code. It's lost its integrity, and Bill Clinton is the emblem of that.
You write that if President Clinton eludes justice, at least it can be said that his destructive influence has been checked. Been checked by whom?
Well, the good side of this book, it's not all negative, is that the ordinary people in America have held the line. You know, and we've seen it with the families in Oklahoma, we've seen it in other people through the book who are resisting abuse of power in their little corner, and perhaps not always successfully, but they're basically preventing what I consider to be a decadent and dishonest leadership class from dragging this country down and turning it into a banana republic. You know, the ordinary people are the ones who are going to save America and not allow it to go the way that other countries have gone when its democracy has been threatened by internal decadence.
I want to get to calls, but briefly give us the history of why you wrote this book and who your sources were.
Well, I'll go to the sources first. There are very few unnamed sources in this book, in fact. Almost all of it is got named sources, so people can make a judgment for themselves about how they want to evaluate it. You know, I first got dragged into this morass when I started going to Arkansas and talking to ordinary people there, and it became quite clear to me a lot of very bad things have been going on for the last 10, 15 years, that it had become a haven of narcotics trafficking. And the more I looked into it, it seemed to me the political machine in Arkansas was involved. And there'd been a lot of misuse of the criminal justice system. People had been intimidated, people had died. And I started looking into these issues, and well, there was no going back after that. I got drawn right into the middle of it.
You also have a fair amount of pages toward the end, appendixes A, B, C, so on and so forth. Right. What's in here?
Well, the first part are documents from the Oklahoma bombing case. They're particularly the debriefing reports from the ATF when they debriefed their undercover informant, Carol Howe, including a debriefing from the FBI 2 days after the bombing, when she named Strassmeyer and another fellow called Dennis Mahon in Oklahoma as having planned to blow up federal buildings. And she said specifically that Dennis Mahon had planned to blow up the Oklahoma City Federal Building. This is 2 days after the bombing. She's at the command center of the FBI in downtown Oklahoma. They never interview this man. They conduct over 20,000 witness interviews all over the country, many of them irrelevant, and they never interview the man that their own government informant told them had planned to blow up that particular building. They have a lot of answering to do.
The book is called The Secret Life of Bill Clinton. The author is Ambrose Evans-Pritchard. We'll get a call from Battle Creek, Michigan, from our independent line. Good morning.
Yes, I think Bill Clinton's getting a bad rap, and so is Al Gore, because it says in the Constitution of the United States that all people are created equal. Mm-hmm. How come homosexuals have to pay taxes, but they're not getting any fair representation? I'm a perfect example. I'm suing a company because they were homophobic. They had the police come and drag me out of my house and torture me for 17 hours.
Caller, I'm going to jump in only because we have a brief amount of time and we're trying to talk about this book by Mr. Evans-Pritchard. Did you want to comment on that or have a question?
Sir. And he's being dragged through the mud by these Republicans. When they find him clean, they should charge the Republican Party for the cost to the American taxpayer.
So you're saying because he supports gay rights, he is being attacked by the Republicans?
Yes.
Okay. Your response?
Well, there may be a bit of that going on. I don't know. I mean, everybody has their own agenda. I can't really answer to that. I mean, I have something of a libertarian streak in me, and whether somebody's gay or not doesn't particularly bother me.
From our Democratic line, Charlotte, North Carolina, good morning.
Yes. Yes, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
I'd just like to say that everybody is a little strange on this Waco and the Oklahoma City bombing. I think you should look to possession for this individual, Timothy McVeigh, and you might find the answer. If you don't do that, you're losing the situation altogether.
Sorry, what do you mean by possession? I'm not sure I quite understand the question.
Do you believe in the Bible?
That's a very personal question. I don't want to get into religious issues, really, on this program.
Who published the book?
Regnery. It's a conservative publishing house in Washington.
Were they your first choice? Did they come to you? Did you go to them? How did that work?
Actually, no, I wasn't really planning to write a book. I just thought it was too much, too difficult to do. And I have a friend who's an editor at Regnery, and he approached me and he encouraged me over a period of about a year to do it. And then my wife weighed in and said, you've got to write all this stuff. He said, you can't leave the country without putting all this into a book. So she persuaded me to accept the offer, and so I did.
How many books have been published?
What, the first print run? I think it's about 50,000, which is quite a lot, actually.
And explain this picture. When was it taken, and why is that on the cover?
Well, oddly enough, I can't answer that because I've only just seen it myself. I came over from London on Thursday night, and I'd never seen the book before. And they presented me with a copy, and I thought, that's very nice.
The picture, of course, of First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton whispering into the ear of President Clinton. But was that taken at the White House? You just don't know.
I must find out. It's terribly negligent of me not to know, but...
We'll get a call from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Good morning to you. You're calling from a Republican line.
Yes, good morning. I would like to ask the author about, as I understand it, Bill Clinton will not reveal his medical records and make them public. Is this the first time that an American president does not want to reveal their medical records? I understand that when he first became president, that the doctor in the White House was fired because he wanted to see what Bill Clinton's medical records had to say. I'd appreciate your comment about this.
That's true. The doctor in the White House, he was going to give an injection, an allergy injection, to the president, but he was asked to do it, and he refused to do it unless he saw the medical records first. And he was, I think, fired within 3 or 4 hours of that. I think it's only in recent American history that people have even thought of requesting the medical records from the president. So I don't know whether there's a real precedent here. He certainly has never revealed them. What he's done is hand over summaries of the medical records, but not the actual raw documents. And one of the things that I know that the Paula Jones legal team want to do is shake loose the entire set of raw documents going back 15 to 20 years.
You, in a number of instances, use the term abuse of power. Who has the power and who's abusing it?
Right. Well, it's more than just Clinton. It's about the whole power structure in the United States.
But who specifically?
Well, the Justice Department, the FBI, the political class as a whole.
So when you say the Justice Department, are you referring to Janet Reno? And when you say the FBI, are you referring to Director Free, or are there people in the departments that are abusing the power?
Well, I think there are people in the department abusing the power. You take the case of Carol Howe. When she came forward as an undercover informant and said, yes, it's true, I penetrated what appeared to be a bombing conspiracy that has great relevance to the Oklahoma bombing, they immediately indicted her well, they didn't indict her, they busted her house. She was still working as an undercover informant for the ATF. The FBI comes in, busts her house, and arrests her boyfriend, charges him, and then they hold over her for 3 months the possibility of charges, and when she refuses to toe the line and shut up, they indict her, and then they put her on trial, she went on trial last July and August, and she was finally acquitted by a jury in Tulsa. But that was an absolutely disgraceful thing to do, to eliminate somebody who's become a liability to them. By what they did is they turned her cover against her. She'd been given all this explosives equipment as part of her by the ATF. Well, she collected it during her duties for the ATF. They knew she had it, and they turned her cover against her. They said because she had this equipment, she was planning to make a bomb. Well, it's absolutely ridiculous.
So who's calling the shots? Who's telling them to do this?
Very good question. And it appears that this thing was orchestrated by the highest levels of the FBI, FBI counterterrorism in Washington. They seem to be the orchestrators of the criminal charges against Carol Howe, and they should be held to account for that. It's absolutely disgraceful. But it was the assistant U.S. attorneys who actually prosecuted the case in Tulsa, and it was the U.S. attorney in Tulsa, I suppose it's the Eastern or Northern District of Oklahoma, who must be held accountable for this. Who gave the order for that?
Did anyone in the Clinton White House, either current or former, cooperate with you on this?
They stopped cooperating with me quite a long time ago.
Why?
I think they found that they couldn't really spin me.
From our independent line, Fort Mojave, Arizona, good morning.
Hi, this is Penny.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
I was calling to, you said Carol Howe was the informant for and had such power. How can this happen in our judicial system here in America? I don't understand. How do we know, everybody's saying McVeigh is guilty. I have a total opposite belief of that.
Oh, you do? Well, I think he was guilty, and his lawyer pretty much admitted that during the sentencing hearings. But I think it's only part of the story. There are a lot of people in downtown Oklahoma who saw McVeigh with a group of other men that morning operating in what appeared to be a terrorist cell. And I feel that the investigation by Glenn and Kathy Wilburn and an Oklahoma journalist called John Cash, who's done incredible work for the Curtin Daily Gazette, have essentially sketched the outlines of the broader conspiracy and who might have been involved. And they've concluded that the bombing was carried out by an organization called the Aryan Republican Army, which is the military wing of the Aryan nations neo-Nazi movement.
In fact, you have a document here that calls it the White Aryan Resistance, and it's from the Department of Treasury, which supervises the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. How did you get these documents?
Well, they came. A lot of it came forth in legal discovery from Carol Howe's criminal trial. Some of it came for. A little bit of it came out in McVeigh's trial. It was provided to McVeigh's defense team in discovery. So basically, most of it has come forward through the legal process. Not all of it. There are some things in there that are still sealed that I've been able to examine.
A few more minutes with Mr. Evans-Pritchard, who's the author of a new book on President Clinton and his administration. Pittsburgh, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Mary Kay, and I'm calling this morning to ask Mr. Sorry, I can't recall your name right now, about your background and your credentials, and so gathering and writing the information from this book. I didn't catch the early part.
Right. Well, I was the Washington bureau chief for the London Sunday Telegraph. I was just sent over here on a routine assignment. I was here for 4.5 years. Before that, I worked covering economic affairs in London. I worked in Latin America for many years. I was the Central American correspondent for The Economist at one point. And I've done 2 stints in America as a reporter, so I've done 7 or 8 years reporting in this country.
You're now back in London. Did that have any direct relation on this book?
Well, it was a hell of a lot easier to write the book and then leave without and escape all the consequences of it. In the sense that if I was an American journalist, and I'm pretty critical of the American press, but I can see all the constraints that they're working under. And it's quite difficult to challenge the entire power structure, which is what I've done in this book. It's not just attacking Clinton. I mean, pretty tough on the Republicans as well. You kind of burn your bridges and you lose your friends, and it's very difficult for an American journalist or any journalist to write that kind of book about their own country. They can't continue to operate and function as a journalist. I mean, if I did this in London about the British power structure, I really couldn't continue to work there. So leaving sort of made it easier.
Ridgewood, New Jersey. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. You just mentioned that the Aryan Nation might have been involved in that bombing, and I'm just wondering, did they have any objection to the Waco debacle? Was it just coincidence that the Oklahoma City bombing occurred on the anniversary of Waco? Also, was Larry Potts involved in the investigation of Oklahoma City? Wasn't he also at Ruby Ridge and at Waco? And you talk in your book about Jerry Luther Parks. Thank you.
Well, that's a hard question to answer all of that. The Aryan nations probably had they didn't like the Branch Davidians at Waco because about 40% of the people who died in Waco were actually black. They were mostly Jamaican, and there was some of them were Jewish as well. And the Aryan Nations is very anti-Semitic and very, of course, anti-black. So, but there was a certain parallel interest that they saw the government out of control, and in fact, the Branch Davidian flag was flying at this headquarters of this neo-Nazi group, Elohim City. So there was some kind of identity with them, and I think Tim McVeigh was very much influenced by Waco, but I'm not sure that some of the other people we suspect were involved in that conspiracy. That was a factor, but not the only factor. I think a bigger factor was the fact that one of their leaders was executed on the day of the bombing. He's called Richard Wayne Snell. He was executed in Arkansas on April the 19th, 1995. And I know some of the families feel that probably was the biggest single. That's why that date was chosen.
In our remaining moments, how does all of this connect to the president?
Well, all these things have happened under his watch. Waco happened under his watch. It's the worst. It's the wounded knee of the 20th century. You know, it's the worst abuse of power. People, in terms of number of people killed as a result of an act by the government, and he never dealt with it. He, instead of heads rolling, people being brought to account, they went out and tried the victims, and some of the victims are now in prison serving very long sentences on what I think are incredibly flimsy charges. And so that set in motion the militia movement. It set in motion, to some degree, the domestic terrorism movement that the United States now suffers from, including the Oklahoma bombing. And this happened under his watch. And although there are deeper forces that have been at work for many, many years that kind of contribute to this, I'm not sure it would have happened if Paul Tsongas had been elected Democratic president.
Ambrose Evans-Pritchard is the author of The Secret Life of Bill Clinton, The Unreported Stories, now available at bookstores by Regnery Press. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We hope you'll join us tonight for Road to the White House, followed by book notes and a live question time looking inside the British House of Commons. That can be seen at 9 o'clock East Coast time. And tomorrow morning on this program, our newspaper roundtable segment will include Jill Nelson of USA Today. Also, we'll be joined by White House Director of Legislation, John Hilley, and Pat Choate.